upstate New York this evening, and we do appreciate you taking time out of your evening to be part of the conversation. Over the next hour, Josh will be giving updates on his work in Congress on behalf of upstate New York and taking your questions live. If you're joining us on the phone this evening and would like to ask a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad at any time during the call. You'll be connected with a member of our team who will take down your name and your questions, and you'll be added to the queue to ask Josh a question on air. If you'd like to sign up for Josh's email newsletter, you can press *6 at any time. If you happen to be watching the live stream on riley.house.gov, you can submit your question by typing it in the box directly below the streaming player. To make sure we hear from as many people as possible this evening, we ask that you please try to avoid repeating the same topic multiple times to ensure that we're able to cover a wide range of issues. Finally, we understand that some of these topics are deeply personal and important, and that tensions can run high. We just ask that everyone keep their questions respectful so that we can have a productive. But first, I'd like to turn the call over to the Congressman to say a few opening words while more participants join and submit their questions. Congressman Riley, you are live and the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, and good evening to everybody who's on. Thank you so much for joining this first town hall. As we're waiting for some others to join, I just wanted to share with you a few things. You know, I've been in office for almost 3 months, and I have to tell you, not a single day has gone by when I haven't been so grateful for the honor of representing you here in Congress. You've put your trust in me to do right by you, and I truly don't take that for granted. We're expecting several thousand people on the call tonight, and I want to get to as many questions as possible. But before we do that, I just want to go over with you how I'm approaching this job. Everything I do here, every vote I take, every bill I sponsor, every decision I make is based on what's best for upstate New Yorkers. I'm not doing things based on what's best for any political party or any special interest or what the lobbyists want. My focus is always going to be on you. And that comes from my deep roots in the Triple Cities. Some of you have heard this before, but for those of you who haven't, I grew up on Bertzel Street in West Endicott. It's a blue-collar neighborhood. All my friends and family and neighbors worked in the factories, and nobody really cared all that much about political parties. And I saw my family, my friends, my neighbors get up early every day. They would clock in, work their hands to the bone, clock out, get up the next morning, and do it all over again. And I saw folks all across upstate New York do everything that was asked of them. And the only thing you all asked for in return was a square deal and a shot at the middle class. And instead, what we've seen over the last generation is a whole bunch of greedy corporations and corrupt politicians selling out the middle class and selling out upstate New Yorkers. They shipped tens of thousands of good manufacturing jobs overseas. They let the big ag monopolies crush our small farmers. We've seen the child poverty rate skyrocket across the region. The opioid epidemic has ripped through. And meanwhile, Wall Street makes obscene profits, and they're using them to buy more and more influence with politicians. And for too long, that's how it's worked in Albany and in Washington. It's the special interests with the deepest pockets and the biggest armies of lobbyists who set the agenda, and everyday folks across upstate New York get left out and left behind. So I ran for Congress to change that because I'm sick and tired of the deck being stacked against you. And I know you are too. So many of you have reached out to me in recent months, over the last 2 months here, to tell me that you're angry or you're scared or you're frustrated with how things are going in Washington. And I've heard you, I get it, and I'm with you in the fight. Look, you've got one party, one political party here that's handing over the government to Elon Musk, who's then attacking Social Security, ripping away health care, firing veterans, defunding farmers, literally taking food off kids' tables just to give more tax cuts to Wall Street. And then you've got the other political party that's doing who knows what, waving canes and paddles around at the joint session, giving lectures on cable news, just yelling about stuff, when what we really need to do is get stuff done for people. So I know, and I've heard you, it sometimes feels like nobody is fighting for you, I promise you that I am. I'm fighting the utility monopolies that are jacking up your bills. I've introduced legislation to cut through red tape and lower your grocery prices. I've sponsored a bunch of bills to support our family farmers who are hanging on by a thread, to protect Social Security benefits you've earned, and to create good jobs with good wages to start making stuff in America again. Overall, in my first 3 months, I've sponsored nearly 50 bills. The vast majority are bipartisan. And in the last 2 months alone, we've had over 50 meetings in the district with constituents in each of our 11 counties. We've opened 2 field offices, hired several caseworkers. Our team's held 10 different mobile office hours across the district. We've already opened over 100 cases and fielded over 70,000 calls in just 90 days. So no matter your political party, who you voted for, we're here to help you, and I hope you'll reach out to us. So I'm so honored to represent you, and I'm looking forward to your questions. And I see we have over 7,500 people on the call. So let's have the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, Congressman Riley. Again, folks, if you'd like to ask a question this evening, it's *6 to sign up for the Congressman's e-newsletter. If you're watching online, you can type your questions below the video player on riley.house.gov. Congressman, we're going to start with a question that was submitted online. The question is, it's actually, Dear Congressman Riley, I've been retired for 10 years and I'm very concerned about Musk's attacks on Social Security. I have my check direct deposited and months ago did the verification on the website, but I know many other people, older people, cannot use the internet. With phone lines being shut down and now offices being closed, I'm worried we won't be able to get help if our check doesn't come. Like so many seniors, I rely on Social Security and don't know how I can live without it. What are you planning to do? Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the question. And when you talk about some folks who are on Social Security who might not be able to work the internet and computers quite as well, I think of folks in my own family around that. Look, with Social Security, you've worked your entire life based on a promise that it's going to be there for you. You've earned it. Every single dollar that comes to you from Social Security is a dollar that you've earned. And you raised the issues with Elon Musk and his attacks on Social Security. And what was it, like a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, Elon Musk said that he thinks Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. And then you hear what he says, and then you look at what he's doing, and it's devastating for seniors and devastating for Social Security. I mean, you just mentioned the issue. They're closing down a whole bunch of offices, or at least trying to. They're shutting down the phones, and that's all designed to make it really, really hard, if not impossible, for seniors to get the help they need. And that's especially true in rural upstate New York. So what's my plan to deal with this? First of all, I've sponsored legislation to stop the Social Security offices from being closed. We have to keep those open. Second, I'm working on legislation now to keep the phone lines open so that folks who are having trouble doing the things they need to do online can just pick up the phone and make a phone call. I also have a bill that would protect your personal information. There's no way in hell Elon Musk should be rummaging around in your personal data. I mean, that's sensitive personal data. He should get his hands off of it, and that's especially the case when he doesn't have a security clearance and he has all these conflicts of interest. And then the last thing I just want to tell you, if you ever have difficulties getting the Social Security benefits you've earned, please call my office. Constituent service is the number one most important part of this job. Our top priority over these first 2.5 months in office has been standing up a constituent service operation that's there for you. If you ever have trouble getting your Social Security check, please call us, and we'll do everything we can to help you. So thank you so much for the question. And Robin, I can take the next one.
You bet. First caller is Kathy. Kathy, you are live with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, Congressman Riley, for answering, hopefully, my question. Since the U.S. Senate voted to accept the GOP-led funding bill, there has been an outcry of electeds and constituents, many in your Congressional District 19, to have Senator Chuck Schumer step down as minority leader. and have someone new come in, or hopefully present a new face so that we can move forward in a direction that we desperately need right now. Do you support this position?
Well, I really appreciate that question. Look, I think my vote on the CR speaks for itself. Let me just be really clear and candid about this. Chuck Schumer was wrong. He was wrong to vote for that CR. He was wrong to let it get through the Senate. He had leverage in that situation. He decided not to use it, and he was wrong. I look at the bills through basically one simple question, which is less about who's the political party behind it, who are the political personalities behind it. I looked at the CR and asked the same question that I always ask, which is this thing going to be good or bad for you as upstate New Yorkers? And that CR was a really bad deal for upstate New York. One example, there's a ton. Let me just give you one or two examples. That CR allowed Medicare cuts to go into effect. So these are the payments that doctors get for treating folks on Medicare. And I had a constituent from Rensselaer County reach out to me about a week before that vote and explain to me how those cuts are going to make it more difficult for her to provide services to seniors. And that CR let those cuts go into effect. Not acceptable. That CR cut, I think it was $500 million, something in that ballpark, from Alzheimer's research. A couple of weeks before that vote, I was talking to a constituent in Tompkins County, and she told me that her husband, who she's caring for, is struggling with Alzheimer's, and her only hope is that the next generation would have more treatments and cures. And then they put a bill in front of us that's going to cut that by $500 million. No way am I going to support that. I heard from so many folks who are getting squeezed with tariffs, and that CR tied the hands of Congress to do anything about it. So I voted against the CR because it was a bad bill for upstate New York. And I've been pretty clear. I think Chuck Schumer was on the wrong side of this. Robin, I'd be happy to take the next question.
Yes, we've got Mary next. Mary, you're live on the call with Congressman Riley. Please go ahead and ask your question, Mary.
Hello, Congressman Riley.
Hi.
Hi, this is Mary from Fly Creek, New York. I'm a retired reading teacher here in the district, and my job was Title I reading position for a long time, and that is funded by the U.S. government. And I'm very, very concerned about the shutting down of Department of Education and all of the things that will unleash for children who need extra help or children who are having problems in school. And what are you doing to help abate that problem and keep the Department of Education open?
Thank you so much, not just for that question and for being here tonight, but also for all of your work that you've done. Look, I'm a product of our public schools. I'm a really proud UE Tiger. We have just been in the office for less than 3 months, so the office is barely decorated in D.C., but one of the things that I have here is a football helmet from UE. Our public schools are near and dear to my heart. And I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of months traveling around the district and meeting with folks who are really on the front lines of a lot of these fights. And some of the folks I've talked to are teachers and their students, but teachers especially, who tell me, they're already going into their own pockets to help get school supplies for their kids. Our schools are underfunded, and we should be providing more support, not less. The thing that's most infuriating about this proposal to dismantle the Department of Education, as I see it, is that they would take money literally out of the pockets of our public schools, our public teachers, our students. I think I read something earlier that said if these cuts go into effect, it's going to cause 800 teachers across our congressional district to lose their jobs. And why are they taking that money out of public education? They're doing it so that Elon Musk and a bunch of billionaires and Wall Street tycoons can get another tax cut. It's the exact opposite of what we should be doing. So you asked me what I'm doing about it. There's a bunch of things, but let me just tell you one. I just sponsored a bill that would push back on the administration and protect the Department of Education from being dismantled in the way the administration's trying to do it. I sat down with some teachers a couple of days ago and talked with them about some litigation strategies. I know there's some lawsuits that are being filed to try to stop the administration from hurting kids in upstate New York, and I'll be supporting that as well. Really, really do appreciate the question. And Robin, I can take another one.
You bet. We've got Terry from Binghamton. Terry, you're live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question, Terry.
Hi, Congressman. I just wanted to talk about our electric bills. I'm on Social Security disability, and the electric bills have gone up sky high. Their delivery charges are more than what my electric and gas usage is. It's crazy. You can't afford to buy anything else because you're paying such huge electric bills. They put in these new meters, and I don't know if it's the new meters or it's just their large fees that they're charging for the electric, for the delivery.
No.
Oop, did we lose you?
Terry, you still there?
I'm still here.
Sorry, I think we lost you, but I think I got the question, and you're back with us. And can I tell you, Terry, this is, spending so much time around the community and, hitting all of our 11 counties. Sometimes I'll just stop off at a diner, or we got to go to the gas station, whatever it is. And I would say there's not a day that goes by where somebody doesn't come up to me and share the same concerns that you just raised. And look, it's two things that are going on. Costs are way too high, whether that's housing costs and the cost of rent, prescription drugs, insurance. But the utility bills are the real driver here on a lot of this. And I think you said you're in the western part of the district, and you're on NYSEG. And then we've got a whole bunch of folks with Central Hudson. And what's going on is these utility companies are owned by massive foreign corporations. NYSEG is owned by Avangrid, and Central Hudson is owned by Fortis. And those big corporations have one goal, and it's to make as much profit as they can for their shareholders. And so in the eastern part of our district, you saw Central Hudson just a few months ago announced to their shareholders that they made $331 million in quarterly profits, $331 million in 3 months. And then what they did, the very next day, they turned around and said they were going to jack up prices, or at least try to jack up prices on our neighbors in the Hudson Valley. NYSEG announced last year that in the course of 1 year, they doubled their profits from $105 million in a quarter to $210 million in a quarter. The reason I have that stuff off the top of my head is because we had a Ag Committee hearing yesterday where I raised this issue with the Ag Committee. And a lot of it is just driven by corruption, because these big utility monopolies then turn around and they give money to a whole bunch of politicians around here, and then the politicians don't do anything to protect you. They do everything to protect the utility company's profits. So what am I doing about it? A couple things. One, for the Central Hudson customers who are online here, I have intervened as a party in the Central Hudson rate case. So what that means is I'm now basically one of the parties in the hearing where Central Hudson's trying to jack up your rates. I've been submitting information requests and diving into the relationship between the prices you're paying and the profits they're making. And then with NYSEG, we're going to open an investigation here. I think that'll happen next week, where we're going to start getting some answers on why these bills are going up. As part of that, stay tuned. We're going to be reaching out to all of you because I'm going to need your help submitting your experiences so we can make that part of the record. And I'm going to be reaching out to NYSEG as well to get some answers. So stay in close touch with us. And then Robin, I can take the next one.
Yes. Folks, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. We've got Lori from Ithaca. Lori, you're live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Congressman. Thank you for taking my call. And I really appreciate you sharing my understanding of what's happening in D.C. today. And I hear you talking, actually, about all of the investigations and bills and legislations that you're introducing that I think is important. At the same time, I think that the battle is being won today and lost for the Democrats in the court of public opinion. And if you take, for example, the scandal around the signal information that's going out today and our discussing of military and confidential information under unsecure information, what specifically are we doing in terms of not only investigations, but actually changing the court of public opinion to stop this madness and keep our country secure?
Thank you. It's a great question. Look, what I'm not going to do is try to give you whatever the Democratic Party's plan is. I think both parties are really doing a bad job with everything right now. You've got the Republican Party selling out upstate New Yorkers to give tax cuts to billionaires, and the Democratic Party is doing I don't even know what. But what I can tell you is my plan. And my plan is really focused, I think, on two things. And I just want to step back and say one thing. I understand people are so angry right now with what's going on in Washington and so frustrated and really scared. And I get it. I hear you. I am too. How can you not be when some of the things we've already talked about, cuts to the Department of Education. I've got 2 little kids, and this administration is basically handing the environment over to polluters. We've got 40% of the kids in our district are on Medicaid, and they're trying to take that away so they can give tax cuts. So how do you take, the thing I've been trying to think about a lot is how do you take all that anger and turn it into action that actually makes a difference? And I think there's 2 things. One, we've kind of talked about a little bit, which is when the administration is hurting upstate New York, I'm fighting back against that with everything I've got. We've talked about some of the legislation I have to keep the Social Security offices open. I have legislation to rehire veterans who've been fired. We talked about the Department of Education. I'm involved in lawsuits, including one with Planned Parenthood. We have the votes that we've already talked about. But I think beyond that, one of the things that, frankly, both parties are really missing and that I'm trying to focus on in this job are kitchen table issues and meeting people where they are. And a lot of folks have said, Josh, you're focused on these local issues and these kitchen table issues, but we're dealing with threats to democracy. And I see those as the same thing, because we cannot have a strong democracy in this country if we do not have a strong middle class. And the middle class in this country has just been completely hollowed out over the last generation. Wages haven't gone up since we let China into the WTO. Costs are skyrocketing. Families are getting squeezed. And so is it any wonder our democracy is in the state that it's in? If you care about democracy and you want to save democracy, my view is that you have to show that it actually works for people. And that is what I've been focused on doing. It's why I have a bill that would lower utility costs. I have a bill that would hire a whole bunch of people in your neighborhood who you can hire to weatherize homes and put $400 a year back into your pocket to show people that democracy can work for them. I've got a bill that I just introduced last week that's bipartisan. It's going to lower egg prices by cutting a bunch of silly regulations and putting hundreds of millions of eggs back onto the market to lower prices. So I think it's a really good question. And I think when it comes to messaging, I think just, do the hard work. The results will speak for themselves. I think there's too many politicians out there who are just show horses and are spending their time yelling on cable news. And if there's one thing you know about upstate New Yorkers is that we're more workhorses than show horses. And so that's what I'm trying to do. It's why you might not find me on MSNBC, but you'll find me at the diner in Marathon talking to farmers, or at the American Legion. I was there a couple of weeks ago serving breakfast to veterans, and I think that is what we got to get back to.
Thank you, Congressman. Your next question comes from the Congressman. Please go ahead.
Hi. So my name is Barbara Mansfield. I'm from Phoenicia.
Yeah.
I'm running for town supervisor in Shandaken.
Good for you.
I really appreciate the bills that you've introduced to protect farmers, but, between the USDA cuts and the tariffs and everything else, I don't know where the millionaires and billionaires think they're going to get their food, but we're in trouble.
Yeah, we really are. And well, thank you, first of all, for running for office and for being here and for the question. Our farmers across upstate New York are hanging on by a thread. And I think we're in the situation we're in for a couple of reasons. One, I mentioned at the very top, I think our politics have been dominated by these big ag monopolies that gobble everybody up. Their profits are ridiculously high, and then what they do is they go in and they basically bribe a bunch of politicians to write ag policy that's good for them. And I spend a ton of my time meeting with small farmers across upstate New York, and I just think it's so important that they finally have their voices heard in this conversation, particularly as we're going into negotiating a farm bill. And so I've introduced a whole bunch of bills. I think almost all of them are bipartisan to make a difference for upstate New York farmers. They include things like supporting some of the really cutting-edge critical research that's happening at our land-grant university at Cornell. I have legislation I'm supporting to make sure more of our local farmers' products can get into local schools and local food banks. I was just on the phone yesterday with the folks who run the largest food bank in our district, and it's heartbreaking to talk to them because they just lost about $400,000 worth of shipments they were expecting to deliver to some of the neediest communities. And so I'm doing everything I possibly can to reach across the aisle, fight back against the cuts that have a direct impact on our constituents. And the last thing I'll say on this, look, I think especially around ag policy and the Farm Bill, I know there's a lot of frustration out there, and it seems like every day there's bad news around this stuff. I'm still hopeful that we're going to get a good farm bill done for upstate New York. And I spend a lot of my time when I'm in Washington. I spend a lot of my time trying to reach across the aisle to folks who also have big dairy industries or apples or whatever the case might be to try to find common ground. And my hope is that we're going to be able to deliver a farm bill that's good for our small family farms for once.
Thank you, Congressman. Next caller is Guillermo from North Chatham. Guillermo, you are live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I'm a farmer and a small business owner in manufacturing added value foods. I'm also a member of the Columbia County Sanctuary Movement, and I'm a son of Mexican immigrants whose family has been directly impacted by deportation. So I have a three-part question, so please bear with me. According to the National Immigration Law Center, the Lake and Riley Act is a manifestation of cynical politics. The Republican majority is manipulating a personal tragedy, to scapegoat immigrants. This act, which you voted for, Congressman, raises serious due process concerns, risking the prolonged detention of people innocent of the charges brought against them. These provisions also exacerbate racial disparities because Black and brown people are arrested at a disproportionately higher rates throughout the United States. So, Mr. Riley, you've mentioned that you sought advice before voting for the Lake and Riley Act. I'd like to know what immigrant organizations and community members in your district did you consult, and how do you plan on working with immigrant organizations and communities on your draft bill to provide a pathway to citizenship for dairy and farm workers in New York State? And finally, how do you believe your support of the Lake and Riley Act has contributed to the Republican majority's persecution and denial of due process to U.S. residents and other immigrants, such as former Columbia student Mahmoud Khalil, currently detained in Louisiana, current Columbia student Yunseo Chung, who's being hunted by Immigration Customs Enforcement, and the indiscriminate mass deportation of Venezuelan immigrants to Salvadorian prisons?
Thank you, Guillermo, for the question, and appreciate the chance to continue the conversation with you. I know we spent a lot of time talking about this one-on-one in Hudson a couple of weeks ago. It was really nice to be able to meet your son and talk to you all about it. I'm really glad we have the chance to continue the conversation. Look, taking a step back here, I think everything that you just said, for the most part, kind of makes the point that I think we all agree on, which is that our immigration system is it's completely broken in this country. And I think both parties are to blame for that. I think both Democrats and Republicans have politicized this issue and have not been serious about solving it. And so my approach to all of this is that we should have an immigration that's both tough and fair. And what that means for me, and I think what it means for a lot of upstate New Yorkers that I've spoken with, is that if you're here without legal status and you're committing crimes, then you should be deported. But if you're here and you're working hard, you're paying taxes, you're contributing to the community, then you should have an opportunity to earn a pathway to legal status. For me, that's pretty simple. I think for most upstate New Yorkers, it's pretty simple, but for some reason, Washington politicians haven't figured it out. You asked me about the Lake and Riley Act. Look, it's one bill, and it certainly doesn't solve all the problems. We need bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform that secures the border, makes sure we're using the right technologies, and also making sure that the folks who are working hard, playing by the rules and paying their taxes have the opportunities that they need. That bill, in my view, it's not a solution to the problem. It does address part of it. You raised due process concerns, and I have to tell you, I just don't agree with that. The bill says that if you're here unlawfully and you're arrested for certain crimes, then you're detained until you have a hearing. And that's really important. At that hearing, and this is also true with respect to the specific cases you've mentioned, at that hearing, a judge will determine your status and will determine whether you're actually guilty of the crime that you've been arrested for. And so that was a bipartisan bill, and I think it solves part of the problem. And bigger picture, we need bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Rob, I'm happy to take the next question.
Yes, and I just want to remind folks, if you would like to ask a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad now. Our next caller is Ron from Walton. Ron, you are live on the call with Congressman Riley. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Congressman. This is Ron Richards from Walton. There's been a lot of great issues that people are bringing up and things that obviously need to get addressed, but I don't feel that we're ever going to get a fair addressing of these issues as long as we don't address campaign finance reform. As long as there's billionaires putting money into the system, there's going to be slanted rulings and slanted bills that work in their favor. I understand that the Citizens United ruling has seriously hamstrung us because they say that corporations are people too. But I am curious why we can't just write something simple, a bill that addresses myself as well as a corporation as well as the person that's running for office, and just say simply $100 limit for individual donations. Wouldn't that also be included in the Citizens United ruling, because we're not being unfair to corporations or to individuals, and it still severely limits the money that these corporations are able to put in? Would you be able to write a bill of that nature?
Well, thank you. This is, if you've been following the work I've been doing, I think this is probably the single most important issue. A lot of folks talk about democracy being at risk, and this gets to it. We're in the situation we're in right now with our democracy because it hasn't been working for everyday people for a long time. And that is because it works for these billionaires and massive corporations that are able to buy elections and buy influence. We talked earlier about the utility bills are too high. I mean, everyday people are sitting at the kitchen table trying to figure out how to afford the utility bill and the rent and the grocery prices that are all getting jacked up. And then meanwhile, you look at a split screen, and those utility companies are raking in cash hand over fist, and then they're using it to interfere, to peddle in these elections. So you've identified exactly the right issue, and Citizens United opened the floodgates to dark money and dirty money in our politics. So the question you raised about whether a bill that limited contributions to $100 per person, that actually wouldn't fly under Citizens United, which is exactly the problem. But I can tell you some of the things I'm doing. First of all, I support a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. It's one of the worst decisions ever from the Supreme Court. There have been a lot of really bad ones. This is one of the worst ever, and we've got to get it off the books and return power to people. I also am working on legislation that will get rid of corporate PACs. We shouldn't have corporations buying influence with politicians. We need more politicians, more people in office who are doing right by you, not doing right by their big corporate PAC campaign donors. I'm pushing for term limits. I think you can reduce the influence of some of this money if you have fewer career politicians and more new voices. I'm working to ban stock trading in Congress. I think people should be in office working for the people they represent, not their own portfolios. So we really got to, there's a lot of things we got to reform to fix our democracy, make it work for people, and you've identified, I think, the biggest issue, which is campaign finance reform.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Samantha. Samantha, you're live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. My name's Samantha. I'm calling from Ithaca. I'm the director of a really large addiction medicine medical practice. We have about 10,000 patients that we treat all of the time for opiate use disorder, and we're combating the opioid crisis every single day, and 85% of those 10,000 patients are Medicaid beneficiaries, and so I'm really worried about potential Medicaid slashes, but I don't fully understand how that happens. So I was hoping that you could explain whether the current federal administration is able to remove Obamacare. I know that there's some bills on the table to change the requirements for people to have to work in order to get Medicaid, which we all know isn't possible. So do you have any plan in place to combat potential Medicaid cuts? Because it's just so disastrous for public health and healthcare providers and patients. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great question. And also, I'd love to have, I'm going to ask somebody from my team to reach out to you after this so that maybe I could come by and visit you in person and see the great work you're doing. Just last week I was in Sullivan County and I was in Ulster County visiting with some of our rural hospitals, and they shared a similar story with me. These Medicaid cuts that are being proposed would be absolutely devastating. In our district, over 30% of our neighbors have Medicaid for their health insurance, and 40% of the kids in our district are on Medicaid. I think it's 70%, about 70% of the seniors who are in nursing homes are on Medicaid. And so these cuts that are being proposed would be absolutely devastating for our community, and that is why I voted no on the budget blueprint. Let me take just a step here, if it'd be helpful, and kind of tell you sort of how the process is for this. So the Medicaid cuts have been proposed through what's called reconciliations, and the way that works is there's a vote on the budget. We had that vote about a month ago. I voted against the proposed budget for a lot of reasons, and this is one of the biggest. And then what happens from there, you can think of the budget as sort of a blueprint or a framework. It basically says in this case that you have to cut $880 billion from healthcare. Then what happens is that budget blueprint goes into each of the committees, and the committees have to fill in the details. After they do that, and that bill that has all the details filled in, that's called the reconciliation bill. That bill then comes back to the floor of the House, and we'll have another opportunity to vote on it. And if it's cutting Medicaid in the way they're proposing and teeing up, I'm going to vote against it because we should not be pulling the rug out from under kids and seniors and folks across upstate New York just to give tax cuts to billionaires, just to give more government contracts to Elon Musk. It's gross. I mean, it's gross. you may know this, my first thing I did out of law school was civil rights work on behalf of little kids who were on Medicaid, and mom and dad working multiple minimum wage jobs. They had to drive hours to get the health care their kids needed and wait months sometimes to do it because our health care system in this country is so broken. And these proposals would just make it so much worse instead of fixing it. So I'm going to have somebody from my team reach out to you, and would love to stop in and see you and continue the conversation in person.
Thank you, Congressman. Next caller is Ann. Ann, you're live on the call with Congressman Riley. Please go ahead and ask your question, Ann.
Hi, Congressman Riley. One of my questions is I'm very upset about how things are going in our country right now, and I'm trying to find what I can do. I've been out there for protests and stuff like that, but there's got to be more that the average person can do. Any suggestions that you can give me?
Thank you. Well, first of all, can I tell you? I just want to tell you a couple things. First, I get this question all the time, and I just want you to know if you're angry with what's happening in Washington, if you're frustrated with it, you're not alone. I'm with you. I'm probably as frustrated with anybody seeing, the one party trying to rip the rug out from under upstate New Yorkers and the other party kind of just floundering around. So I totally get it, and you're not alone in that. For me, and maybe it's another question I could tell you another time, some of the specific things I'm trying to do in this political environment, working across the aisle to get stuff done, to help folks at their kitchen table, and then also picking my fights where the administration's trying to hurt the people I represent, fighting back on that. I think for you, joining a call like this and participating in the conversation is actually really, really important. And the last thing I'll say is I've been out talking to so many folks who are just on the front lines in these fights, whether it's the folks that I met with who run the Head Start programs in Delaware County a month ago, visiting, I think I just mentioned to y'all the rural hospitals that I visited. I went out to Bliss Towers in Hudson and took a tour to get a sense of just really how acute the housing crisis is across our district. We have a round table that I do with a bunch of farmers from across the district, and there's just so much need out there. And so one of the things I would suggest, and we're actually talking about this now in our office and trying to figure out if there's a way to do it, find a local organization, whether it's a food bank or whether it's an environmental group. Find a local organization and sign up and volunteer, because we have so many of our friends and our neighbors who are out on the front lines trying to help the most vulnerable among us, and instead of getting the support they need and deserve, they're staring down the barrel of big cuts that are really unfair. And so I would encourage folks to reach out to those organizations, offer a helping hand, and I think that's a really one way to potentially do things.
Thank you, Congressman. And I want to remind our listeners, if you're enjoying this update and you want to stay informed, you can press *6 on your telephone keypad to subscribe to the Congressman's e-newsletter. Congressman, your next call is from Krista of Wilmington. Krista, you're live on the call. Please go ahead.
Hey, this is Krista. Yes, I just received a teacher's aid of a long time ago posting, and I've heard everybody's questions and everything. I was about to say something about housing and stuff like that. I just got recently evicted from my apartment last week, and I got rehoused somewhere. And Mr. Riley was just saying to help people to help or
I think did we lose the caller?
We did.
I think I gathered. So I had a little bit of difficulty hearing the question, but I think I got it. And what I would say is, I'd like for hopefully somebody on our team can reach out. It sounded like she was dealing with a housing issue, and I'd love for one of our caseworkers to get in touch and see if there's anything we could do to help with that. Beyond that, I had a bit of a hard time making out the rest of the question.
Yes, sir. I think it was truly about lowering costs and making it a little easier for working class people.
Gotcha. Well, I'd love to address that then. Look, this is, again, like one of the things that just comes up over and over, whether it's the rents are too damn high, the utility bills are going up for God knows what reason, grocery prices are too high. And so I have been just relentlessly focused on those kitchen table issues since I got here. And the way I think about it was, some of you have heard me tell this story before, but growing up, and I remember my parents would at the kitchen table would just balance the budget, and they would have these envelopes, and they would put the money in the envelopes for the school clothes they put on layaway for my sister and me down at Kmart, and there'd be an envelope with money for saving up for the Christmas presents for the end of the year. And I talked to folks all across our district who are sitting at the kitchen table having those conversations, and there's too many envelopes and there's not enough money to put into them. And so I have been really, really focused on making that a little bit easier for folks. It's why the first bill that I introduced as a lead would put $400 a year back into your pockets by lowering your utility bills, because God knows Central Hudson and NYSEG don't need that $400 nearly as much as you do. I just introduced a bill last week that would lower egg prices. I think I mentioned this earlier on the call, but it's a bipartisan bill. We were able to build, as a freshman in the minority, I was able to build a coalition across the political spectrum, from the head of the Freedom Caucus to some of our more progressive colleagues, got everybody together on a bill to overturn some regulations, put hundreds of millions of eggs onto the market, and hopefully lower your grocery bills. So, you're right to be focused on that question. And again, I'm going to ask somebody from my team to reach out to the caller afterwards, because it sounded like she may have had an issue with some housing, and I'd love to have one of our caseworkers connect and see if there's any way we can help on that.
Yes, sir, and thank you. Next caller is Linda from Ithaca. Linda, you're live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead.
Hi, Congressman Riley. I'm calling to see what you would think about stopping supplying Israel with offensive weapons that are used on Palestinian civilians.
Thank you. I appreciate this question. And it's, look, people feel really strongly about what's happening in the Middle East. How can you not? Following everything on the news. I will say one thing that I have found that there's common ground on, and especially issues that are this divisive, I think it's important to start from a place of common ground. Everybody I've talked to, at the end of the day, they want peace, and they want stability in the region. Let me tell you the way I approach these issues. I think Israel is a really important ally to the United States, and I think that's true both for historical reasons that are obvious, also geopolitical reasons, given the instability in the Middle East. And the terrorist attack, and that's what it was, the terrorist attack on October 7th was just absolutely barbaric and horrific. And I do believe that Israel has the right to defend itself against terrorist organizations that would want to destroy it. That said, I do have very serious concerns with the way the war in Gaza has unfolded. I mean, I'm a dad, and you turn on the TV at night. I don't know how you can watch the news coverage of what's going on and not be just heartbroken and devastated by the scale of human suffering we're seeing. So it needs to end, and I think the path toward peace that we all want, it has to involve getting our hostages home, get all the hostages home, end the fighting, end the suffering, get us back on a path toward a two-state solution. You asked particularly about arms, and what I'll say is I think Israel should be subject to the same conditions as any other country. And so, there are laws and there are rules in place that govern how any country can use arms that are provided by the United States, and I think Israel should be held to that same standard.
Thank you, Congressman. We've got time for one more call, sir. We've got Cynthia from Ithaca. Cynthia, you're live on the call with Congressman Riley. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call, Congressman.
Sure.
The fact that most of the bills you have introduced are bipartisan means that there seems to be some hope that some Republicans might break ranks with the party line and vote for bills that are beneficial to their constituents. So to some extent you've answered my question, because I've been wondering about what efforts you and frankly the Democratic Party in Congress has been making to sway Republicans. I cannot believe that all of them are in line with what is happening. To sway those to vote in favor of the things that will help their constituents and to vote against those things which are harmful. As I said, I believe you've probably made some good inroads on this, but I'm wondering on a larger scene how to ensure that when your bipartisan bills make it to the floor, that you will have the votes necessary to pass them while the Democrats are still in the minority. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great way to end because it kind of goes back to where we started. I mean, the way I was raised is you don't make decisions based on political parties. You make decisions on what's right and what's fair. And we may all have disagreements on policies, but I think upstate New Yorkers have a host of shared values. And so I have spent a lot of my time over these first few months. The time that I'm in D.C., I try to build relationships with folks across the aisle. I've actually found that there's a whole bunch of folks who are freshmen like me on both sides of the aisle who also have young families and little kids. I find that's a really good way to bond with people. We've had one of the highlights for me of my time so far has been having my kids play with kids from there's one of the other freshmen from across the aisle. He's probably one of the most conservative folks here. We ended up having our kids play together and built a relationship. And then last week we introduced a bill together to lower egg prices. And I just think that's how this place should operate. It shouldn't be divided up into tribes that are just fighting against each other on everything. We should try to get to know each other, and we should try to find places where we can find common ground on things like my bipartisan bill to lower your utility prices, things like our bipartisan bills to help our dairy farmers. So look, I'll close with this. I know we're about to run out of time and lose the line, but it's a good way to end by saying the thing that I've heard the most from folks over the last couple of months, particularly since this new administration was sworn in, is a huge sense of anger and fear and frustration. I think I've said that a number of times tonight, and I've heard it from everybody. I want y'all to know I really believe this, guys. Like, we're in this thing together, and I am still incredibly hopeful for our region and for our country because I am seeing that there are still opportunities to do things in a bipartisan way that make a real difference in people's lives at the kitchen table. And if we can focus on that and focus on showing people that democracy can actually deliver lower costs, better jobs, fair competition for our farmers, if we can actually do the work, it's going to restore faith in our democracy because it just hasn't been working for folks for a long time, and I'm really committed to being here to make sure it works for folks for once.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you to everyone who joined us tonight for this evening's telephone town hall, and especially to those of you who asked questions this evening. You can always reach out to Representative Riley's office directly by visiting riley.house.gov. I want to thank you again and wish you a blessed evening. Good night, everyone.